long absence. There were some issues that happened right after the holidays. One of the reasons was the holidays, but there were some things after the holidays that caused the long absence. But we're back in full force, and we will be taping more frequently, right?
Yes, we will.
Because Anton loves this show. Congratulations are in order, though, to our co-host, Dr. Chris Purnell. She was appointed to the mayor's commission on homelessness. I'm assuming it's a big deal.
It's a very big deal.
It's a very big deal.
I served there one time myself.
Excellent.
I served one time myself.
So are you happy?
Of course. Always good to make yourself available to your city.
Okay, so hearing from Doc. Doc's going to be doing wonderful things for the homeless people. Watch out. We want to get right into the issues. The first issue I want to talk about is actually what's going on right now while we're taping. And the reason why we're actually not over there at Essex County College, and that's because there's a meeting with the superintendent, Cami Anderson, in reference to closing down 7 schools.
Yes.
Yes.
In the city of Newark. Now, she said this was on Dr. Cliff Janey's desk when he was here, who was also the superintendent prior to Cami Anderson. And this is just a plan that she's really, so she's actually not trying to take credit for it. Now, I don't know if she's not trying to take credit for it because she don't want to say it was her idea.
Right.
Or, you know what I'm saying, is she really just saying, I like Dr. Cliff Janey's plan, you know, for closing down these 7 schools, and so I want to proceed with the closing of these schools. So, you know, in the particulars, what it says that, and if you read the headlines, it says closing 7 failing schools.
Yes.
Right? I assume that it was more than that was failing in the city of Newark, but she's closing 7 of them.
Right.
Now, what's odd about this to me, though, is that you just had the, what do you call it, the New Hope Bill passed, Urban Hope Bill,
Right.
passed in the Senate and Assembly and signed by the governor, which allowed for private companies to come in and take over public schools and run public schools. And so to me, the way this is coinciding with 7 schools closing, and then we have this bill passed called the Urban Hope that allows for private companies to come in and actually take over and run public schools. I just think there is some sort of collusion going on here, and you know that was already the plan with these closings. What do you two think?
I think first and foremost that the big issue that the community is having is, regardless of what is happening with these schools, there's been minimal community input and minimal outreach to get the community's input on what they're doing. I think when you have any failing organization, failing institution, you should take the necessary steps to correct that failure or be able to reorganize to move out that which is causing the failure so that that model can be successful. When you say that there's collusion involved in these entities that want to come in, I said to a friend 5 years ago, and I remember saying it one time on the show, education is the last big government cash cow. After that, mark my words, it'll be transportation, because they'll privatize and sell our roads in a minute. If they're going to sell our children's education, we won't be worth the ground we walk on. Remember I said that. But education is the last big government cash cow, and every entity that is known to be in existence in this capitalistic environment wants to capitalize off that. And that's what we have. So whether this is Cami Anderson carrying out Janey's agenda, or whether this is some subterfuge, we know that when the players got involved, we understood what their agenda was. We understood it so much just so that we can have an education commissioner passed. He would move out of the county of the senator, so that held it up because of courtesy. So what I'm saying is, I believe that all failing institutions need to be checked. They need to be reorganized for success within a time frame they haven't corrected themselves. But I also believe that the stakeholders should be involved in suggesting what goes on. I also believe that if this is the way, this is the trend, and I'll end with this, if this is the trend that we're having for-profit entities come in and take over and are able, if you can say, you can go to a school district, give me all your bad kids, and I'll charge you this amount of head, then you know what, if that is the direction and the trend that we're going in, then I believe the members of the community need to be versed in that directive. They need to be versed in the economics of that, and they need to be versed in how that affects their community and start taking advantage of that. They need to become involved in that, because if so it goes and so it blows, they will be affected by it anyway.
So, Doc, I think to me, you know, I think they still missed the point with urban education and the barriers that kids in urban environments, especially urban poor environments, face or trying to learn, actually trying to go to school.
Right.
Trying to come home and do homework. I still think it misses the point. I don't think closing the school down and making another school overcrowded answers the
that's why,
call.
for me, I really need to know what are the stipulations of her plan. As someone who has benefited beautifully from a very good education, I know how vital that is in progression for a community and progression for a person. What I'm interested in is, how do you define a failing school? That's what I want to know. And how soon did you know the school was failing, and what didn't you do properly to try to circumvent this from happening right now?
Right.
What I am concerned about is that we don't have a plan that's proactive but reactive, because although these are the 7 schools that have been pointed out, are there 7 more schools performing on par to where these 7 schools are, and performing for the same amount of time where these 7 schools
No, are there 7 more charter schools performing just
correct,
as poorly?
correct, and because this goes both ways. This goes both ways. Any school that is educating our children, and when I say our children, the children in Newark, needs to be held to a greater accountability. I think accountability has been lacking for years across the system. So I really need to be reassured that, 1, it's not a rush to judgment, 2, it's just not being reactionary, 3, that we actually have an engaged process going forth and a plan to help the child. Because like you said, in the end of the day, it's about the kid.
But Doc, and I want to dig, because I want to have this debate. I want to dig deep into, you said you were afforded a good education.
Right.
But what about the environment you grew up
Right.
with? Did your environment afford you the ability to be able to learn and accept the education? We're dealing with children in the city of Newark who live in high poverty, that go home with nothing to eat.
Right.
Everything on their block is gang affiliated drug things. Some of them going from home to home. Some of them, listen, we have families now, a lot of families living in homeless shelters, who kids
Yes,
still
we do.
attending these
Yes.
public
Yes, we
schools.
do.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand, why do people think that's not a barrier to education?
Well, it is a barrier to education, Rock, but it cannot become the end point. That's my main.
But that is, you don't think that's a big part?
Listen, that's my main sticking point. Why? Because there are children globally who are poor, who are still using the vehicle of education to progress forward.
Yeah, but it's still not the majority of them.
No, listen, I've spent a decent amount of time in South Africa.
Right.
And you want to look at the comparable rates of poverty.
Right.
In some of the poorest neighborhoods are some of the best educated children.
Right.
When I say some of the best educated children, because the community has come to see education as the vehicle to change the
But
dynamic,
that's not what this community
not
has
just
come
for
to
the
see.
person in the community.
We blame it on the teacher.
No.
We said it's the whole teacher's responsibility.
I don't think we're
because I
just
agree
on
with
the
you that it's the community, which is the
Definitely.
parents, right? Should have more
Larger than your
involvement.
parents, larger than
Well,
your
I would
parents.
say a big part of it is, to me, most of it is the parents. That when I came,
But if we say, true, most of it are the parents, but if we say that, we will discount a generation.
but we blame it
that
on
has
Anton.
disaffected
Anton's a
parents.
teacher, and I'm not saying specifically,
everybody-
but
everybody
Anton's
has
a teacher.
accountability.
And what
Everybody
we're
has
saying to
accountability.
Anton as a teacher is that it is your responsibility that no matter what this child going through at home, no matter what happens when this child is outside of your responsibility to educate, that you're responsible to make sure and guarantee that this child is doing well in school. And I just don't think that's reality.
Let me just say where I'm different. First of all, as an educator, what I have to establish, what I try to establish with parents, is that this is a partnership.
Yeah.
I don't do this by myself. And the minute you think that I do, you're wrong. Your child will fail my class. He will never have a better time smiling, laughing, and joking, failing a class ever in his life if you're not going to help me do this. You know why? Because there are fail-safes that permit me from being what I might need to be for this child in order to get him to understand what it is he needs to understand. So with that being said, we have a generation of parents that have become younger.
Yes.
We have a generation of parents that are not as responsible as they need to be.
Yes.
Right.
We have a generation of parents that allow their children to be raised by the television.
Right.
And when we fight those things, what you talk about when you go to South Africa and you spend some time there and you see what education means, what I'm telling to you, what I'm submitting to you is that we have a cultural barrier that we have to fight.
That I agree.
The cultural barrier also, and it isn't just prone to just urban centers also, because we have a cultural barrier that is propagated by media. All right, and our media does a lot of things too that devalues education because they make you think if you could spit 16 bars and wear tattoos and get up and dance and wear pants down your tail, you could be a millionaire. You don't have to know, you could talk in the double negative. You don't have to have proper command of the King's English, and you'll be a millionaire. If you know how to dunk from the foul line or jump over a car, or cover your eyes or wear a Superman cape, you might be a millionaire. You can make it. So I think that culturally, now let's put it in its proper perspective. For me, culturally, our society has a responsibility to change the image too. Why is it that a coach can make $3 million a year, but a teacher gets beat up by the governor of the state of New Jersey for averaging $36,000, $37,000, $40,000?
But my point, but why does the teacher get
So my thing is also, when you talk, we're talking about the closing school.
Right.
I'm also concerned about the people that are displaced, because what about the union members that you represent that work in
Right.
the schools?
Well, you know what, to be honest with you, I don't even want to make that an issue. To me, it's more, you know, although it might be an issue to me,
It's an issue when it-
you know what I'm saying, and I, you know, we'll deal with right.
schools.
But we'll deal with it, right? But I'm saying on it, because that's something, because that's when they try to say, oh, it's all about, you know what I'm saying, the money, you know, so I don't, to me, although that's an issue to me as a labor leader, right, as a community person, I'm more concerned with the reality of a child being educated in the school system, knowing what the plight that this child has to go through on a daily basis.
My point to you
and why,
is those workers represent the middle class of this society
I understand
that affected
I
socioeconomically.
get that part, and trust me, I get that.
That's what I'm saying. You want to talk about socioeconomics?
I get that, and I get that, and I'm saying I'll be the first on the front line to fight and to push that argument. But I'm saying for this particular discussion, that's not the fight that I'm having. I want to have a dialogue about, well, realistically, that we're going to be able to teach kids in an impoverished setting, the majority, not a few, because yes, you can have a few kids, and I will say to you that in most of those countries, because I too travel over this country, it's still not the majority of those children.
Oh no, I disagree with you. I disagree with you on that. If I'm going to compare, so I spent time specifically in the Johannesburg area. I saw everything from shanty towns to black suburbs. But even in the shanty towns, where the majority of people were living in abject poverty, there was a cultural priority around education.
Yes,
and people were not allowed to say, because I'm poor or because I'm struggling, that I cannot value and hold people accountable to give me a proper education. That's what I'm saying.
But did they have the iPad, the Xbox, and the PlayStation?
Got everything. You got Mary J. Blige.
Right. I mean, I was over in Johannesburg too, but I'm just saying, like, the majority of them don't have these things. Like, they live in little shanty huts where they build for 25 grand, which is like,
so am I hearing you saying that it's
$2 in America?
Are you saying it's okay though because they have distractions? Because
no, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying that we ignore that fact and we just blame it on
teachers.
I just
mentioned it, but
no one's ignoring it.
No, I think we
do.
I think we do ignore it. I think
we do ignore it. I'm saying to you that the Cory Bookers, I'm saying the Cory Bookers, the Chris Christies of the world, the Surfs of the world, all these people with these high ideals who happen to have Ivy League education believe that none of that bothers. Who, when you look at their background, except for Shavar, to be honest with you, when you
an endorsement? No,
I mean, I'm just saying because Shavar's was different. Except for Shavar, I'm saying I'm strictly talking about this. I'm nothing wrong with the Ivy League background. I'm saying the ideals and the environment that they were raised in to get that Ivy League education was much different than most of the kids that's growing up in this. I'm gonna give you an example. Let's look at the 3 doctors. I used to make this complaint all the time about how we made the 3 doctors these big stars. Here it is, white folks and Chinese folks and Asian people, whatever, they have doctors every single time. I mean, it's a normal thing for them to graduate doctors, right? But as soon as we graduate 3, we make it a worldwide, national, you know what I'm saying?
You have a problem with them being relegated to a status that other kids shouldn't.
I'm saying, like, it should be the norm.
Right.
And I'm saying that it's not the norm. And I'm saying that it's not the norm because it is the exception, because everybody can't get that. Everybody gets, so the 3 lucky ones, it's like hitting the lottery. So the 3 lucky ones, they wind up pulling together, becoming doctors, but the majority of the kids in the area, that's just not their reality.
But listen, it's twofold. It's twofold. While we have to be realistic and while we have to be smart enough to say that poverty matters, at the same time, we in the community must find a way for our poor children to get a leg up. We have to. We can't, because otherwise you have to wait on anti-poverty measures to actually have outcomes before you're going to expect to have appreciable educational gains.
But Doc, I think that's more. I think that goes along the lines of when you talk about wellness being infused into the community, because we have to stop victimizing each other in our community. And before you can get to that status, one, we have to look at each other as a community again. I think that we don't take enough responsibility for the things that go on in our community.
We don't.
And therefore it trickles down and it affects the most vulnerable of us, our babies. Having to close 7 schools for anyone is a very serious decision to have to make. But I'm more concerned at the underlying factors as to why. And when you're bringing in these models of education, if they're no better, because just like I said, you can find 7 traditionally public failing schools. Now you can find 7 charter schools that are failing, that have different issues of accountability and things of that nature. I don't think that the holistic notion of that socioeconomic factor as it pertains to the kids is factored into that decision-making prowess. I think it is about someone's financial bottom line, who's going to profit the most, and who maintains control.
Well,
that's what I think it's about.
So my question to you, and I want to, because I don't want to belabor, we spend a lot of time on this point. Maybe we do need to do a whole show about this. But I'm giving you a scenario, right? A child who is in a single-parent household, whose father's not around, whose mother is either on public assistance, or who's the only income in the house, who's probably working 2 and 3 jobs in some cases to keep that home, who has more than one child in the home, who's everything in their environment is either drug infested, or you know what I'm saying, and it may, or substance abuse. It may even be in the home with that parent. I'm saying, like, when this child wakes up in the morning, this child has a problem. It's not eating breakfast before it goes to school.
Valid.
This child is walking through a gang-infested neighborhood. This child is going to school and everything that's around his environment. Right? When these kids, most of the kids in that school aren't trying to have a learning environment, because most of these kids in school, parents aren't active. Then when this child comes home, he's coming home to a place where he may not have food on the table. He may have a parent who's frustrated because they don't have enough money to pay the bill. Or he may have a parent and being watched by the street because the parents working 2 or 3. How does that child get educated? I'm sorry. And I'm saying to you that is the majority, to me, of the population in the city.
So you're saying you believe that of maybe the 36 to 40,000 Newark school kids, what percentage of them do you think?
Oh man, at least probably 70% to me.
You believe
that
so?
You believe
there are 20,000 kids in this city that run around?
Yes, I believe that. I'm sorry.
20,000 kids.
I believe that. I believe that.
Ungoverned.
I believe that. I'm sorry. I believe that. Y'all tell me you don't believe that?
20,000.
I believe that. I believe that. That's.
Well, what?
I said 70, by the way, and I'm not going to take it back. Y'all giving it 50. I'm saying 70. I'm saying that I believe that the majority of the households fit in that criteria. I'm saying that when I visit these schools, when I go to the youth house and talk to these kids, that these are the stories that I hear.
I hear these stories too, Rock, but what I'm saying, and we're not really saying anything different. Okay? What I'm saying is that we can never, at the end of the day, say that while and because we are poor, our children are not going to be educated. Listen,
that's ideal.
I know.
But what's the reality?
I think that gives people a pass. I think that gives administrators a pass. I think it gives school systems a pass to say,
you might be right on
listen,
that,
it gives them a pass.
I agree.
When I was in the public school system in East Orange, there was a different culture, right? There was the culture that these young black kids can excel and they can do whatever they want. When I went to the public school in Glen Ridge, no one thought my A's were worth anything. They told me to my face, your A's aren't valid. They aren't proven. Because you come from a neighborhood where, oh, maybe you were just the creme from people who really weren't that good.
Wow.
Because there's this expectation, one, that black at a certain socioeconomic status can't learn. But that's not true historically. And that's why it is imperative that the community stands up and says, okay, we need holistic care. We need wraparound services. We need the understanding and the accountability that these poor children have so many different factors and things implicated in their lives, but we still have to teach them.
But I don't disagree with that, Doc. I'm just saying it just seems like the scapegoat are teachers. The whole blame is placed on the teachers, and that's when we get into talking about failing school.
Right.
And if you listen to what they're saying here, they're not putting it on the community.
No.
They're not saying it's because the community that surrounds the school, because I can guarantee you did a poll or a study about the community that surrounds the schools, and maybe somebody should do that. I wish I had the money to do it. Right. I would guarantee you that the kids that's going to them schools experience what it is that I'm saying. But they haven't done a study about that because they don't want to address the issue that poverty in your environment does affect your education. Because it would cost too much to fix that.
Right.
So they don't want to address that situation.
Well, no, there are a
so
whole lot of issues
automatically,
when you talk about poverty.
Right.
The disproportionate.
so what they begin
there are a
to
whole lot of
start,
things
so
when
what
you
they
talk
begin
about
to
that.
do is start saying that it's the teachers who's not educating. They need to have competition. Then we open these charter schools, and I'm telling you right now that these charter schools aren't allowed. That's why if these charter schools were allowing kids in with bad grades and who were not performing well, then Cammie Anderson would not be saying she wants to hold them accountable and they got to open up their schools to more special
you know what?
needs.
Because you just touched the button with that one. You can look at the retention rate in charter schools for Black and Latino males, and we can stop there. That's a whole show. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay, right. But I just want to be clear. She's asked for accountability for them to include more special needs because that's not what they've been doing.
They have not.
They've been. I'm telling you right now,
for the competition for charter schools.
I'm sorry.
She wants more accountability for the competition.
Right. I know somebody. I was telling Shabar this. I know somebody who was trying to get their kid in Liberty Charter School, the school that he's on the board for, and they asked for the child's records. So he said, "No, Rock, they not." I'm like, "Don't tell me." I'm
It's
telling
supposed to
you.
be a lottery.
Right, it's supposed to be a lottery. And she said to me, "No, they're not supposed to be." I'm like, "Siobhan, I'm telling you what she called and told me. She told me to call you to see if you can pull a favor because they're asking her for her child records." So what did they ask for child records for if it's a lottery,
It's a
Doc?
lottery.
Hey, that's very valid.
I mean, you know,
Let's pull
but let's
numbers
move
all
on.
the way back.
Right. But the, you know, in keeping with that, there was a ruling by the Supreme Court Justice that said that the book administration, after
I'm not saying nothing until I read the email. I'm not saying a word.
I'm just saying, like, there was an
email.
ACLU took them to court because they wanted, there was a parent organization who wanted to read the emails between Mark Zuckerberg and
your business.
And he, you know, they lost the case on the executive privilege, and they were told that they had to turn over the emails. I mean, now this is 50 pages of emails, Doc. I want to know, what do you think is in these emails?
50 pages of emails about something that's probably worth $500 million now because of the IPO for Facebook.
Look,
So,
this
I would like to know what is,
situation, Facebook money lacks transparency, and it bothers me. It bothers me to the fact that the mayor's office was very reticent to give up the emails because it increases the suspicion that there's something in there that we don't want on the level.
But Doc, there is.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. It bothers me. Two, it bothers me that we're still allowing Newark's, the Foundation for Newark's Future to sit on the money and to be very laborious about how it's going to dole out these monies, again, lacking transparency, again, treating
Well, the CEO said you don't have to do that.
I know, because
That's
that's
not
not
how we run professional.
philanthropy.
Right.
And really, that's a slap in the face, and that's insulting.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it says again, it's a paternalistic attitude that says that this community is not savvy, not sophisticated enough to know the issues that are on the table, and we need to hold people accountable who believe and ascribe to those types of beliefs. Because that's what keeps us back en masse as a people, en masse as a culture, and it's time that people from different persuasions, different ideologies, different parties, that we all can stand up and say, pull back the sheets.
Well, I think that when you really talk about pulling back the sheets and exposing things like this, I told you.
So what do you think of the emails, though?
Hey,
I want predictions.
We won't speculate.
I can't do
I
that.
want to speculate about the emails. It's 50 pages to Mark Zuckerberg and whomever else he was about.
It could be that.
100 million. I mean, he had to convince somebody to get. Listen, it ain't easy to get $100 million.
It's more than something.
It ain't. No, listen.
It's more than. I just want to read the emails before I
It's not easy to get $100 million donation.
Listen,
it's not.
So I'm saying, like, what did you have to say to the guy to get $100 million?
I just want to read the emails and then I'll talk about it.
Yeah, but I'm like,
bro, I told you already.
He's not gonna budge. He wants to
I want to read the emails because I already told you what I felt.
No.
I told you a few shows ago. I told you about the Chris Surf connection, the payment out from the foundation to Chris Surf's group. The Cammie Anderson coming in was picked by Christie. That's who the governor wanted. Not to mention that we allow the community to continuously have our brain washed over the fact that it's been the state that's been in here for the past almost 20 years, and the school system has been getting worse under their watch.
Even improved.
It hasn't even improved, but it's okay. So I don't know what I want to see what those emails say.
So I'm predicting
because especially if something is in there from the governor. I definitely want to see some emails and some tweets or beeps or whatever from the government.
I think it's something with,
Oprah got to be on there. Somebody listen.
I actually believe that these emails is a conversation between whatever think tank and that Mark Zuckerberg is about.
I'm sure it is.
Being able with this money to be able to take control of Newark school system.
I'm pretty sure
that's what I believe now.
I'm sure
if that's not what it is,
they'll be
just
as interesting as Ron Saladin's tapes.
Right.
They'll be more interesting.
I think you're going to...
Those emails will be more interesting. You boy.
Let's say think it's a different word. I'll say I hope not, but I
there is no way
that there will be candor within the email.
Man, you want to hear? Boy, you think Palavecchio? Brother, you think Palavecchio has something to say?
Displays insensitivity.
Yes, and I
know. Wait till some liberal cats with money tweet what they had to tweet.
Well, I know because these are wealthy people.
Yes,
that's he's emailing.
Are you serious?
I went to school with people who said things to me. How did you make it up out of slavery and into the OR? Right. And so there is with privilege still comes a certain thinking and a certain bias. And
I can't wait to read the email.
I want to read the email.
So I want to know how many federal injunctions will be placed on that before they get to
I think they're going to fight. I don't think, they said February 10th. I told Deborah I think they're probably going to wait until 12 midnight, 11:59 of the 9th before they submit. You probably get something that's blacked out this word.
Oh man, a lot of stuff probably be redacted.
A lot of things will be
redacted. Oh my God,
because believe me when I tell you, I'm sure.
Especially listen, because if there is something you have to understand something, and this is why I said I want to read the emails. Mm-hmm. If something negative comes out, do you know what that does to his stock? See, we're not looking at. See, I'm looking at the big boy game. I'm looking at the end game.
Well, that's money.
This man just got.
I ain't giving up my
28. Now he's worth $20 billion. He's worth $25 billion.
We ain't going that far. I ain't giving up my Facebook.
Listen, man, you never know.
You
never know.
I ain't giving up my Facebook account.
You never know.
I'm telling y'all right now, I'm not giving up my Facebook account.
Well, I tell you this much. It is a fact. It is a reported fact that only 30% of the people who use Facebook are from the United States. I mean, we're not talking about just here. So, I just want to hear what the email said. And I'm sure he's going to be very cagey about it.
So we can move on. Let's move to crime.
Okay.
And let's move to an issue that
it's near and dear to Doc's heart.
Yeah, the doctor actually lost his issue. So we can gloat because
lost the issue.
How did
I lose the issue?
Well, listen, Doc was opposed to the security guards. Like we wanted the security guards. We wanted to save businesses.
Cherry picking of the lowest hanging fruit.
So let's tell you what it is for let the people know what we're talking about. Okay. I know you want to defend it, but there was the ordinance that was just passed by the Newark City Council limiting the chicken shacks. How many hours that they can operate in the high urban crime area. Now, the person who sponsored the ordinance, which is Raz Baraka, actually originally wanted security guards, which I thought was a fair ask to have security guards, especially at night in these eateries, knowing that there is high crime in those areas. And Booker vetoed it. The chicken shack folks came and protested with Corey. And so now they came back and they said, all right, well, if you can't get the security guard, then you have to close down at a decent hour, which, by the way, is in every other municipality outside of the city of Newark. These facilities do not stay that late. Do not stay open that late, and the surrounding municipalities around us, except for the city of Newark. And so, do you think Corey's going to sign the ordinance? Because he's still got to sign the closing. Now they have to close at 10 on weekdays and 11 on weekends. Do you think he's going to close?
I can't speculate what the mayor will do one way or the other, but I'm in agreement with this. And you guys know I'm going to be in agreement with this. Come on.
Right, because it's helpful too.
Public health.
I know, public health, right. So Doc think that all these chicken shacks are self-poison anyway.
No, I think, let me say this.
You're right though, Doc. I agree with you.
Let me say this.
Even though that chicken do be tasting good sometimes.
Hey, look, especially ambassadors on South Florida.
Come on, man.
Look.
I don't know what they. I don't know what. Hey, Doc. I don't know what type of season.
I don't know.
And you put on that chicken, bro.
I don't know, Doc.
Sometimes.
But listen, the biggest thing is here. When you have these institutions, you have to remember that our community supports them. Our community causes them to look the way that they look. They come where it's profitable. They go to West Patterson or West New York, wherever they live, and put their families through college and take care of them and do what they do. And that's the mindset that they have when they come in our community. So they come to our community because profit is here.
Right.
So to have an eatery come down and talk about, you know, wanting to stay late, in my mind, you know, I say sometimes, well, how many book scholarships did you give away since you've been in my community? How many book bags did you buy for back to school?
That, man. They give a good chicken.
But furthermore, I
cheap
think,
chicken too. Bro.
I think the community has a responsibility, an even greater responsibility, even just as much as the council does, to really speak against these things and speak about how they negatively affect the community.
Right.
It's not just on the council or the mayor. I don't think that the council should have been forced to do this. I don't think that the mayor should be forced to have to be bullied. I don't think Brother Barack should have to go through a process where he had to overturn something because he wanted to do what he thought was right to keep the people in his community safe. I think the community needs to take real responsibility for this. Anytime you can have a young, innocent bystander come home, go away, go to college, raising a family, doing everything they're doing, and they could come back home to visit and stand inside their restaurant and get shot, then what is the restaurant? Has the restaurant allowed themselves to become? Because we haven't heard anybody get shot at John's. We haven't heard anybody get shot at Jay's. We haven't heard anybody get shot at Brick City Bar and Grill. We haven't heard anybody get shot at Avenue Ale House. We haven't heard anybody get shot at Lawful 7. So what is it about the culture? And that's what I think I get to about when you talk about wellness. There's a cultural wellness that needs to. What has become us as a culture? You know, if the community is taking enough responsibility with that.
So being devil's advocate, right? Can't the store owners use the same argument that they use about Walmart? You increasing. I mean, these places do serve cheap food. I mean, families get fed off of. I mean, you can go get a meal with like 5, 6, 7 pieces of chicken for like $5, $6.
How about we have grocery stores in there instead?
Or why do we have community-run health institutions
that sell nutritious food?
Well, we don't disagree with you. Are they going to invest in those areas?
No, we're not going to invest in those areas because still we don't have certain priorities around wellness. And it's not just because people don't understand the
Well, how do you feel about that?
How do I feel about not having priorities about
seriously,
wellness?
as a doctor,
it's infuriating.
As a person who ran for the school board, as a person who likes kids, as a person who's invested and bought a home here, and you're affected by everything that goes here, how do you feel about that? That you're number one, what you do, you have a license to be a doctor. Like I have a license to be a teacher.
Folks, you're talking about crime, you're talking about
one second, man. Relax. How do you feel that a man has to put up an ordinance to say that we have to declare violence as a public health issue in the city of Newark? How do you feel that it's not already known and there isn't dollars put behind marketing that fact so that we can deal with this crime and all these things? I don't care what you say about crime, rock, or everything ties to someone's socioeconomic status. Right. So you can talk about crime in a number of ways. You can keep saying this crime, education. The best thing I've ever seen show that was The Wire. But as a doctor, how do you feel that we don't have a strict directive around public health that will help even deter some of these issues?
It's infuriating. It's infuriating, but it's not just the fault of, let's say, municipalities. It's not just the fault of a national. It's a national culture. We do not prioritize things around health promotion or prevention. We don't. We're in a healthcare system that is flossy in many ways. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of technological advances, right? We can go to these very well-funded academic centers and institutions, and we can treat the rarest of conditions, we can diagnose and we can detect disease, but still the basics around food and nutrition, around physical activity, we don't have a sense of incentive or priority. What's more infuriating for me is that even within my own culture, in my own community, we overlook the gains that we could achieve in prioritizing wellness. Wellness is not just in of disease, but wellness is around priorities, around who you are emotionally, who you are physically, who you are mentally. Should public health, should violence be considered a public health issue? Yes, it should be. No one debates that in the public health community. There's no scholarly person that says, oh, we should not do that. I mean, the WHO, the World Health Organization, has said that violence is a public health issue globally. And for us to have this false debate in this city, whether or not we should have that type of designation, is a smack in the face to anyone thinking.
So, Doc, why don't you apply for the health director position for no?
Oh, I tried that already.
As a teacher, it bothers me that education is the back burner debate that had to be pushed forward because it was a capitalistic agenda as opposed to a social, not a socialist agenda, but a social perspective on how to move our country forward. I resent the fact that ever since education was put up front now, it's up front now that it is for profit, because education has always been for profit. I have a problem that the community hasn't taken a hold of that issue. It hasn't seen how it is a person from Wall Street can make $10 million a year, but a superintendent of a school district making $250,000 is ridiculed because they've never taken a day off work and once their vacation
Or
or
even
sick
a
time.
teacher.
Or even a teacher for that matter.
It's not a profession that we bestow a prestige and
Right.
an honor upon.
Well, we attack it.
We attack it.
Whereas a doctor still has some prestige and still has some honor. I can tell you I am who I am, let's say outside of my family, because I had fabulous invested teachers.
So I really wanted to talk about this report about the Newark gang-related murders, but I just wanted to talk about one quote in there, so we end the show. I think we went over our time. And that was a quote that Sammy said. He said that it's not that the gangs are selling drugs, that the drug dealers happen to be in gangs.
Belong to gangs.
Okay, Doc, what's the difference?
There is no difference.
I read that quote.
That was a DeMayoism.
And I reread that quote, and I asked myself the same question. Because police director Samuel DeMayo, it reads in this NJ.com report.
Who I like, by the way.
Yes.
Okay,
in Newark, it's not
Here we go with the
come on with it.
Anton with the Samuel DeMayo thing.
who happen to be in gangs. I get the point that he's trying to make. He's saying in other urban environments there is this sense of belongingness. I belong to this gang versus I belong to that gang, where here narcotics is really driving the crime. Bloods and Crips are even willing to come together as long as it doesn't touch their drugs or it doesn't touch their market share. It gets back at what are we doing to really prevent crime, and what are we doing to prevent the proliferation of gangs as feasible opportunities for growth.
Well, so Anthony, here's my issue, right? And I do like Sammy too. I was liking him more until I read this quote. Okay. And this quote to me makes it seem he a little bit out of touch. And here's why. I know for a fact that drugs fund gang activity.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? And to say that the gangs aren't selling drugs, it just happen to be drug dealers selling. What he's really saying is that the gangs aren't organized. And I agree with him to an extent that a lot of them aren't organized.
They're organized enough.
You know what I'm saying? But they are organized enough. And I would say that I will guarantee that most of the gangs here utilize the drug trade and other sources of illicit income, and you know the prostitution is coming back now in the city that they're using. So there are other forms of criminal activity that they're using to actually fund the gang activity.
Let me say this. I think what happens is people really get away from admitting the extent to which we really have a problem here. And I think that every time you read a soundbite, or I'm sorry, you read a quote or you hear a soundbite, it's them trying to get away from the fact that we have a real crisis here. Yeah. No one, especially a city like Newark, doesn't want to be labeled Camden, or in no disrespect to Irvington or Camden, but where the state police have to come in, you have to have federal monitors, because one of the things you really have to factor in, if you admit that the gangs are organized, then you have to admit how corrupt the police are too. So those are things that really don't want to be addressed. And you know, and when you talk about those things, when a person walks up to you and says that the police let the gang and the drug dealers know what's going on in the community, everybody who says that can't be lying if you got 100 people saying it. So, you know, when you talk about the gang culture in itself, you have to talk about the holistic notion of crime, and that might include members of the police department. I'm not saying any in particular ones. I'm not saying what. I'm not saying you read Newark Speaks. You read Newark Speaks all the time. You hear all the different accusations, cases pending and things, all of these different things that are happening. So there is some collusion there.
So we got bad cops.
But I think that you can't have a functional drug trade without someone being in a position to open some doors for you where the head was turned for.
I don't disagree. I don't know if I'm going to say the whole force is corrupt, but I do
never
agree
said
with
that.
I do agree with
I never
that.
said that.
Okay. I do agree that. I do agree that there are some bad cops.
Let me take it back to the quote though, because I don't want us to miss his point. Let's say on how inartful he is at saying it. Is he saying that people are more drug affiliated than gang affiliated?
No, what he's saying is the gangs aren't organized.
Right, true. But is he Is he getting at that in Newark, the drugs are still the bottom line, not just identification as a gang member?
Doc, I think what he's really trying to do, regardless of where angle he's hitting, and that's no disrespect to your inquiry, I think what he's really trying to do is say we're not losing, and they are. I believe that we are losing this war. I believe that we're losing, if it's a war, whatever we call it, tactical deployment, safe summer initiative.
Because we're fighting it wrong.
We're fighting it wrong. We're fighting it incorrectly. And sometimes you have to, what do they say? You have to outthink Hercules and outmuscle Einstein. I think this is one of those opportunities where they might have to do that.
Right.
And I think that, you know, until they look at it from a complete holistic perspective and bring everybody in, we're just going to be talking in circles and hitting our coats like this.
I mean, I want to end it with, I think that probably Sammy needs to actually rethink the statement that he made. I think if he really read it, I think a lot of people will read some into it that maybe as a policeman, he probably don't want people to think about his methods, actually trying to put some sort of plan to deal with crime in the city. So let me say I want to thank my co-host once again for coming out. We'll be back here hopefully in 2 weeks to discuss some more issues. So we want to say everybody thanks for watching us and good night.
Go well.
Be well.